at some point in your life, you will be in somebody's crosshairs. And in matters of ascension, as we are elevating from 3D worlds and constructs into 5D and beyond, because there are multiple levels and layers. But right now, where I'm at presently, space and time, we culturally are focused on the shift from 3D to 5D. So during this transition period, it is not all love and light and rainbows. And what you'll find is that you might have the best intentions. You might open your heart, extend friendship or partnership or romantic intentions towards somebody. And while you are in the seduction phase, while you are getting to know them, while everything is going great, you don't necessarily see it coming. And some people are very, very good about hiding and reflecting parts of themselves that they want to mirror to you to make themselves subconsciously more likable. Sometimes consciously, but I find that this is almost this instinctual pattern that is ingrained in us as part of our social behavior. It is quite normal to mirror people. In fact, there are mirror neurons in the brain. So there is this process of taking social information and reconciling it with this internal algorithm that we have inside that tells us how to behave. And when we want to be likable, we naturally, as part of our wiring, will call up certain behavior patterns that we think subconsciously, of course, that would be pleasing to the other. And that creates bonding. That creates unity, because humans are very, very complex. You don't have to have a personality disorder to do this. You are very, very complex. And the you in this moment right now might be very different from the you in the next moment, and in the moment in 5 years and 20 years. So if you think about all of the behavior patterns that you have in your reservoir of selection, what you will find is that you naturally tune yourself to people in your life who you want to connect with, who you want to impress, who you want to date, who you want to spend time with, and they do the same thing with you. It's normal. And so when you're in this process of getting to know somebody, they don't always show you some of the behavior patterns that they're more afraid that you might reject them or abandon them. And what happens is that things and signs might point in certain directions, but you have to use your intuition to sometimes figure out the full depth of somebody's shadow. And it is not when you are with them and things are going well that you should be worried. When things go south, it is often when you are trying to respect yourself, draw boundaries, or walk away. And depending on the level of patterns and sentience that a person has, it's actually quite complicated. There's emotional intelligence and other factors. I don't want to get too far off track here. But depending on the compilation of the person and their archetypal tendencies, you might not realize that just by walking away and taking care of yourself, literally, just by doing the right thing for you, you could be in somebody's crosshairs. They could wage a war on you, or try to tear you down, or hurt your reputation, and you might not see it coming. The crazy thing is that when you're working with people who are still very, very wounded, as many people are as we are on this transition ride, some people are coming out of hell and ascending beyond. So there are deep-seated historical wounds and memories that people have. And the way that the human mind is structured is that they will select people that remind them of people who have wounded them in the past. And they will play out these roles, like inserting you as the character for them to work through these issues. That's why it's very important to be cognizant and aware of who you're getting involved with and why. Because when you understand which lessons and patterns are active, you understand which realities are going to manifest for you. Because people are portals. And so what happens is when people are still wounded, and you, in the face of them not treating you right, you draw boundaries, you assert yourself, you say no, you walk away, you do all of these self-love components, right? The very act of doing those and not allowing somebody to mistreat you will put you sometimes, depending on the person and their archetype, will put you in their crosshairs. Isn't that incredible? And they can also be on the spiritual awakening and consciousness journey. How is that possible? It's because the shadow aspects in human psychology are buried within. And they require certain stimulation factors to bring them to the surface. And assuming that the person has a sufficient amount of insight, this allows them to use the world as their mirror to learn from their reactions, their mistakes, and their behavior. But sometimes, especially when people are in heightened emotional state because of these triggers, they have an inability to look at themselves first. This is very, very normal. The emotional experience actually eclipses their ability to self-reflect. And sometimes that self-reflection does not happen for years or decades. I need to say this again for somebody because I can sense that they're distracted. But this is really, really important. Sometimes that self-reflection does not come for years or decades. And if you're working with somebody that is actually completely unconscious, it may not come in this lifetime. So where you need to be careful and very, very wise, and this message is very particular. This whole episode is for somebody very specific, probably several of you, but definitely somebody specific, because this was downloaded to me and I had a different episode queued up that was shelved because this is a priority. Because somebody's walking into a trap, but they don't know that they're walking into a trap. And other people are going to use this information to process their life in very significant ways. But somebody is working with a situation presently that needs insight So bear with me if this part doesn't resonate with you. Please be patient for me. There is this misconception that I've had that I'd like to share with you. A mistake that I have made is assuming that because I was on the spiritual awakening and consciousness expansion journey, and I was meeting friends who were also on the journey, I just blanket assumed that everybody was doing the same level of work. What I have come to realize is that there are some people that parrot, meaning they study and absorb really well, and they mold their personality in superficial ways to fit a certain paradigm. Again, this is pro-social behavior. It's not ill-intending at all. It's an attraction thing. They are drawn to the journey. So they don the clothes, they go to the retreats, they start hosting their own, they create communities, right? You see? But they've read the work, they've read other people's work, and they adopt it, but they don't actually go deeper. They don't actually work with their shadow. And so what you see is that as you get close to them, you see the wreckage in their lives. You see the disruption. You see the integrity issues. You see a lack of personal responsibility. You see blame shifting, gaslighting. You see lots of different things, but because you're in the inner circle, it doesn't happen to you yet. And so what can happen is that there's almost this naivety when you enter into a contract with somebody or you start establishing yourself with somebody. There's almost this compartmentalization where you see how they behave with others, but you realize that, well, that's not happening to me, and they seem really kind and generous, or whatever the story is, right? So there's this cognitive dissonance which occurs. And what happens is that sometimes people are very, very vulnerable in maintaining their impression and other people's impression of them. And so they're very edgy if anybody starts communicating truth about them that is unfavorable or could be seen in an unfavorable light. And so you'll start to see that they're quite particular about who says what about them. And as a result, they become a little paranoid, possessive, very self-righteous, very exclusive. And so what seems like this privileged community that you're entering into can actually turn dark very quickly as you realize that you're walking into the lion's den of shadows. And the mere act of walking away, such as what we see in cult-like behavior, can put a target on your back. And you read the stories of what they've done in Scientology for people who have dissented, and it is insane how they have, not all of Scientology, and I don't even know if this still happens, but they have gone out of their way to systematically destroy people who have spoken their truth about their experiences, systematically destroyed them, financially, legally. One woman was framed, attempted framing with murder. And this is serious, life-altering, destiny-altering things, right? Just because she respected herself and walked away. And because she spoke her truth and tried to warn other people. Think about that for a moment. This is a advanced consciousness and spiritual practice. And to go out of their way to gang stalk, to destroy somebody, simply because they respect themselves, they walk away, and they live to talk about it and try to warn other people, is quite frankly psychotic. So when you understand the underhanded nature of humans, and you realize that it doesn't matter if you are around people that are in the spiritual awakening journey, you need to have discernment. You need to have very clear sight and being in tune with your intuition, especially when you sense that things are not as they appear on the surface, is critical. And making the right departure with the right framework, the right story behind it, is sometimes essential. The thing that I love about shadow, and if you're on the shadow awakening journey, then you, if you don't already know this, will become very accustomed to this. Shadow protects. And sometimes we get blinded by our idealism of what it means to be spiritual and conscious and to live in integrity. But when you're working with people that are heavy in their shadow, who are demonstrating issues with personal accountability, responsibility, and integrity, nobody is entitled to your full disclosure. Nobody. Especially if they are heavy in their shadow. Nobody is entitled to anything that can be used against you. Nobody is entitled to be privy to your life, to any details that can harm you. And if you are in a situation where forced transparency and forced intimacy is part of the dynamics of the group or the community, nobody's entitled to your honesty. Because people who are in their shadow often demand that other people are honest with them and transparent with them, but they themselves do not hold themselves to the same regard. Isn't that interesting? They will say, we value this, but they don't embody those values. That is where shadow is your friend. Shadow protects. And dishonesty, for people who are being dishonesty, protects you. And sometimes you can't just walk away cleanly. Sometimes you need a story. You need a socially acceptable story for that group, because it can be serious. So whoever this message is for, if you need assistance, feel free to email me at sacredjourneyproductions@gmail.com. But I hope this helps you navigate any sort of circumstances where you are embedded with people who are not living up to this dream or this illusion that the surface would pretend that they are supposed to. Remember, shadow protects. Good luck.